SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. My name is Todd Kirk. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Casey Trujillo. Today, we have an excellent guest. We will be speaking with Dave Derington, who is a phenomenal thought leader in the space of customer education. He really, I guess, as we were talking with Dave before, I would describe him as a sponge who loves to learn about this field, about this industry, helping to learn about tools, technology, processes that can help people be successful if they want to go in to the world of customer education. Dave has had a robust background. He's worked in many different industries, including as, I believe, a lab chemist, a professor, a web developer, a project manager, a business analyst. He's a jack of all trades, really. And he's also the co-host and the co-founder of CE Lab, which is a phenomenal podcast he leads with Adam Abramescu. That's right. I tried. I practiced beforehand. And Dave, we're so glad to have you on the program. Welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Thanks. I'm really appreciative of you folks joining or having me join. This is fun. I've wanted to talk with you at Brainstorm, and I like the show. It's really cool. SaaS Therapy. You know, I'll just say this. I always, when I'm talking with people, I say, I feel like I'm becoming a SaaS therapist as well, because there's so much. It's something to lead in with, because there's a lot. I can tell you, this is one of the stories that I can share. There's trauma and PTSD in SaaS, and we don't really give voice to it as much as we should.
Oh, Dave, I think you could have helped me in my childhood if my therapist would have had a Pearl Jam shirt on. Like, I would have felt comfortable talking to that therapist. Right? That's what I'm excited about today. For those that are joining and seeing this, you see this great jersey that he has on a Pearl Jam. So, Dave, you must be a fan of Pearl Jam for some time. Are you up in that area? Like, tell us the history of Pearl Jam.
I can't tell you the whole history. Go see them. They've got so many albums and so much amazing music. Saw them the first of two nights in Seattle. And wow. And I know I missed the best one. My girlfriend went to the one yesterday, and like they went over and over and over and over, and just you can't imagine how cool it is. They're just amazing. But in my bio wasn't also mentioned I'm a musician. I play sax in a band, I have an album, and I've done an art exhibit too. So yeah, what I like to lead with that is music and creativity are at the heart of what we do, and we can't forget that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like I need to go pick up a hobby now. Well, Dave, let's get to know you even just a little bit better. Todd and I always like to throw some funny questions to our guests to get to know you just a little bit better. They're this or that questions, or sometimes people refer to them as would you rather. So we're going to do three quick ones. Question number one, Dave, would you rather be stuck in a romantic comedy with your worst enemy or in a horror movie with your best friend?
Oh, I think I'd pick the romantic comedy. That sounds like it'd be a lot of craziness. No, retribution and horror. I don't do well with horror, but yeah, that's my answer. I'm sticking.
Well, the good news is, as we all know, every romantic comedy usually gets to have a lot of back and forth hatred, and in the end, you're going to resolve all of your differences with your enemy.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. In a horror movie, it doesn't usually end well for the person. All right, that makes sense. I get that one. Would you rather meet Bigfoot or an alien?
Alien.
Why?
Unless Bigfoot is an alien. I don't know. Oh, man, just get me off this planet, man. Come on. It's crazy here. Please take me in the probing thing now, but I'll risk it.
Last question for you. Would you rather have to always say everything that pops into your head or never be able to say what you feel?
Oh, gosh. Well, I always say what pops into my head.
I was going to go with that one.
A major weakness and a strength sometimes, but Ooh, you can't stop that meter. It just keeps ticking.
Well, that's what we're hoping for today, Dave, because I think the topic that we want to talk about is customer education and the impact that they have. And reviewing your content. If you don't follow Dave, go follow him. He has amazing LinkedIn posts. He has little YouTube lightning takes or something like that. You call them. They're phenomenal. I love them. But Todd, get us started with the first question. Let's dive into this topic because I know a lot of people want to understand more about this.
Well, I think so. Our goal today, Dave, I think we really want to pick your brain around what are the right things that we should measure? How do we make sure that we're focusing on making real impact? And I think so many people in the customer education world feel like they're disconnected to know if they're really making a difference. But maybe before we jump into that, I'd be curious because this is a topic I'm really passionate about. And it feels like so often when I talk to customer education people, they'll say, I know I probably should be focusing on something other than just the number of people who started my learning content and completed it. But that's kind of the main thing. It's like, it's almost become the standard that we just focus on how many people started looking at something and did they complete it? And that's it. And it's like, and that isn't the real goal. It kind of becomes this phantom that we're chasing, and it's can potentially lead us off the true path of where we should go. So I'd be curious, why do you think it is? Like, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'd be curious, like, why is it that customer education people have had to settle almost with focusing on the wrong things?
Got some really good stories for that, actually. I'll set it up, and I want to talk about that just generally right now. It's because it's hard. Hard stop. Let's think about it. So I think this is a good entree and a great question, Todd. That let's think about education traditionally, pedagogy, whatever you want to call it. Somebody you talk to and they're an educator and they know education science, they know adult learning theory, they know all this stuff. I spent, and to preface it, I've done a wide variety of things. And one of the things that I fell into was my neighbor at one point said, "Oh my gosh, Dave, you found your inner teacher. You found your true you." And it took me a really long time to find that. And there's a reason for why I'm saying this, that I entered into education kind of by the passion for it. And I found myself teaching in university. I was doing video game design, database design, web development, and event management, just things that I love to do. And I particularly love video game design. And it was a craft I was learning about actively. Now, when you think about teaching, what do you think about? Okay, I've got a classroom in front of me, right? Let's say you're in my classroom. You're my two students. You're A students. I see you drift off, Casey, in class for a few minutes, and Todd, you walk up and leave and don't come back. I'm like, oh, what the heck? It's an interactive experience where we see and interact with one another. The metrics that are there are, were you there, right? Butt and seat. How long did you stay? Maybe. What did you do? What's your quiz score? What's your test score? These are table stakes in traditional education. We all know them. What's your test score? Did you not complete the test? And we have a grade book and you get a grade. That doesn't work for B2B and B2C SaaS. It doesn't work for the rest of the world who's moving at lightning speed. So the hypothesis I would offer, right, because I don't know everything, is that most people get into an environment where they're like, oh, I'm a teacher. Maybe they've transitioned from the teaching world and they're sitting there now and they're working for a technology company trying to teach people. Look, I've been on a quest. This sounds really weird. I can get to that more, but I've gone to a bunch of different companies with intention. And then I went out to consult with a company via a company called Service Rocket and saw all these people. Did this podcast called C Lab with Adam. And we've talked to even more people. We built a community around that. We've talked to even more people. What the information and the data is showing us is that, back to what I said, this is hard. It's easy to say, who went to my LMS? I get an LMS. I stand up in Academy. I have people go to it. I know who they are, kind of, and I know they've done stuff. And I go back to my VP, professional services or CS, and say, look at this. Look how people show up. And they gave me a really good score on my survey. And then now this is where you get, I can break there if you want to go a little bit further, but I'm going to tell the other side of the story.
I think, Dave, I've heard you call this vanity metrics.
Yes.
Is that right? That's terminology you use, and why do you refer to it as that? Like, is it just because that is the thing that makes me that I can hold my hat to, and it's easy, like you're saying, or
It's
why
easy.
do you use that term?
It's easy, right? Very easy. It's when I say vanity, I say that with the intention of kind of sliding that and making it feel negative. And it should be things like that. And if you're teaching in school, that's your job. If you're teaching in SaaS, that's not your job. Your job is to change behaviors. Okay. How is you completed a class going to change your behavior? Or you didn't complete it? What do I know about you? It's vanity in as much as those are right in my fingertips because, again, predominantly we have a learning management platform, right? And you can see people do stuff. And if you stay within that box, in the box, you are doing your job technically. But people are losing their jobs because they can't get out of that box and connect it to the true data, to the true information and the metrics that matter. And the metrics matter are business metrics. And that's really hard. And it's not hard for the reasons you'd expect. So that's where I want to go next with that. But it's hard because like they're vanity metrics. Yeah, anybody can show vanity metrics. I've done it. Like, oh, look at this. And then my boss comes and says, well, how does that help our business?
Mm.
Dave,
How does it help your business?
one of the things that sticks out to me there. So my wife is an instructional coach. So when you mention about traditional education, we commiserate a lot about the pain in the traditional education world that has somehow crept into the way we focus in educating people in the SaaS world. But there's a great thought leader in the traditional education space named Ken Robinson. I don't know if you ever heard of him. And one of the things he says that's really cool is he says there's a focus too much on teaching and not on learning. And I think it's funny that we talk about learning management systems, but really what they are teaching management systems because they're all centered on me. What are the things that I did? What are the things that I accomplished? And that is I produced content, that content got watched. But the focus should actually be focused on the student, and the student get the thing that they needed so that they could be successful. And so there's a flip. And I think there's something to that I think we somehow miss. That we're really focused on all of the things that matter to me, which is I made something cool, but it's not about did the person actually accomplish the task that they needed to be able to accomplish. So I love that point, Dave.
Yeah. Or get the outcome, not even just do a task, to get an outcome that's based on the task. And let me put it like this. I like to use math because everybody hates math, and it's a good way to angle in on what I'm trying to say. Vanity metrics, or just like anybody can teach. I think anybody can do that at a base level. I've got a script. I follow the script. I say what's on the script. I'm sharing that information to you. They're reading it. Did you pick it up? Yep. Did you hear that? Yep. Did you pay attention? Nope. What? Yep. Take a quiz and you're out. Nothing sticks, right? So that's addition, subtraction, basic math. I see you did this and that did this. And I went to the class, blah, blah, blah. Maybe algebra. Now, getting the real data, the metrics, is calculus. And if you're like me, I went through calculus before and it was not fun and easy. I mean, later on I kind of got it, but I was sitting in the laboratory actually 5 years out of university. Go, it just can't, like, it's a maturity. And when I want to hit on that word maturity, it takes you a lot more energy to collect data points that are scattered all over. And you go, okay, in an LMS, I've got everything there. That's algebra. It's easy. I can do the math function. But the data points that are constellated around your business are, I'm going to cheat and move ahead a little bit. And let's talk about, I'll just do them real fast, like onboarding. How fast did you get somebody on board and did they do well? Adoption, monthly active users, daily active users, weekly active users, retention, NPS, renewals, churn, and so on, right? Well, that's not butts and seeds. How do you even measure those? And when you take an educator and go, boop, you're magically a customer education person now. Oh, wow. Okay, what does that mean? Now that's where I think we had to turn our attention to. It's like, this is calculus. And that's not to scare anybody. It's not really. It's the methodologies and the tools and the things that we have around us now get us to, and I dare say, closer to causation. And that's something we can affect now with the AI, ML, other tools, and smart people in data science roles and operations to work with.
It's awesome. Dave, I loved how you started with mindset, where you're like, hey, this is hard. I'm just going to cut to the chase right at the beginning.
Hard.
If you're going to start to move past the basic math, it's going to be hard. But you also lay it out in a way that's easy. I do appreciate the way that you approach this. And so I'm in the box, Dave. I feel claustrophobic. I feel like I'm in a silo. No one wants to work with me. How do I get out of this box? What are some principles that I should start to think about as I'm sitting and I'm watching this, or I'm in my car listening to this? How do I start to get out of the box? How do I start to develop the relationships with the key people? What are the strategic measurements that I should be thinking about? You listed some there, but what's kind of the 1, 2, 3 steps in getting out of this box?
Okay, I want to share something with you, if you like, if you will. Okay, you got this on the screen now.
Yes.
This is the Customer Education Manifesto, and there's a reason why I start with this, because we can get into metrics, we can get into all that stuff, but this is the foundation of how I and Adam and many others view our role and where we're going with it. So it's 6 steps, right? 6-step program, easy. But to preface it, we spent a lot of time thinking about, well, how do we actually do our jobs and what matters? And this was put together by a number of different people who are thought leaders and practitioners and excellent folks who have done this job for many, many years, even before it had a name. And it's had a name, but it got forgotten a while. So the rules are this. We guide customers to value versus educating them on every feature. That's product training. That's documentation. I care about it, but I don't. That's what you build upon. You build a program that scales versus customizing every time. It's like, hey, send Jane to go train these people. Oh, what do they need to know? And we're going to assemble a bunch of custom stuff and work in their org, right? That takes time. It doesn't scale. Lead with data tied to business outcomes versus just measuring class activity. Nobody cares about the vanity metric. Your boss, these things are why people right now in the marketplace and my peers and me included have been affected and impacted in our jobs, because we're often set up for failure because we can't measure the outcome if others aren't collaborating with us. And those others are really important. They're your executives and your data team. And folks say, oh, well, education isn't important. It's shown all over the place that it is, because we're really kind of the only folks that can get you there all the way consistently. And then Agile, right? We live quickly. I would rather go to market super fast, gang, with something half-baked, but correct and accurate. It just doesn't look perfect. Slap a beta on there and get it out of the door and say, okay, customers, you're in pain. You don't know how to do stuff. Cool. We're going to do a webinar, then we're going to wrap it. We're going to do all these things, and then loop it again and loop it again and loop it again. It gets better. You don't have to be perfect. Now, coming from the education world, oh, heck no. Right? A lot of it. I mean, can you be any more square sometimes? Like you've got to be perfect. And that's what we've been trained. Now, this isn't a negative either. We have been trained all through our educational process to be perfect. That's why an A is 100%. Right? And it goes down from there, and you're always losing points. I don't believe in that. Try again, learn again, fail. I did that in class one time. I said to my students, hey, I want you to succeed through failure. I want you to try and do something I don't even know. And we're going to learn from that. And then designing experiences you want to learn from. Are you going to create that? We've all gone and done those harassment trainings or, I remember I was going through a soccer. I used to be in St. Louis, and I didn't go to the church, but there was a Catholic church diocese that ran this amazing soccer program, and they did just a wonderful job. What they didn't do a wonderful job was with the 4 hours of training, watching these archaic SCORM videos and having to literally sit through that 4 hours of hell. Like, I cast aside some sins on that one, but oh, good God. I don't want to learn like that. I could have clicked through that in a pamphlet in 5 minutes and then said, yeah, I'm good. And then kind of related to that is the moment of need. What is the moment of need? Look, we'll just pick on you, Casey. Okay, I've got to do something right now. I got to do this. I got to get this out. My boss is screaming at me. It's 4:00 in the morning on Sunday, and I got a business thing to prepare for on Monday. I got to get this done. I got to get fixed.
Yeah.
Am I going to get any help? No. But if you have not just a documentation, but you have an example that goes through the relevant workflow, the series of things that all fit together in a kind of a weird way that's not exactly what you're doing, and you can guide somebody through that in 15, 10 minutes. Oh my God. Now they see the art of the possible, and you've taught them to fish. So those are the principles, and I can stop sharing if I figure out how to get back to my main
Dave,
screen
that was awesome. I would call those. I think some people in customer education would call that heresy. Like, is this really possible? I know you said it was hard, but is it possible? I think those are two different questions. Is it possible to do this? I get that it's hard, but it will get easy as I do it. But is it possible? What you just said?
Yes, it's more than possible. There's a discrete way to make it happen, but it's not easy. It's not easy if you don't have. Okay, let me. Can I tell you a story?
Please.
It's a good time for stories. Okay, I'm not going to name the name of the company, and because I love them, they're awesome. But this was one of the hardest experiences I've ever had in my career. I came in an organization, they were a unicorn, scaling really fast, really, really fast. I mean, painfully so. When I mentioned earlier about PTSD, we had it because we had people jumping into roles and doing things. We had even a person who was an on-site therapist, a coach, that came and talked to us about stuff and allowed us to have that space. And I talked a lot. I used them all the time. Like, are you a therapist? And she's like, yeah. Like, oh, cool, let's do this. But we were talking about the job. And the conversations I had about the job and why it was so stressful for me related to, okay, I don't feel like I have any help. I don't feel like I have any guidance. I know what I'm doing, but I can't break down a barrier, or I'm stuck in a silo, or, and this is the worst case, I would ask everybody on this, listening in, to like close your eyes and think of yourself as an executive, right? You're the CEO. And somebody comes along and say, oh, we need a training program, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is kids flicking paper balls in the back of the room. We're looking at the teacher. I'm bored out of my mind. It's so slow. We're tech people. We absorb stuff so quickly. And a lot of the people that have this kind of a neuroplasticity, which is this product's like this product, like this product. Oh, I get it. Doom. Okay, but now I need to understand how everything in that product fits together, and it's different. Those are workflows. Those are use cases. That's why we buy an app. So that CEO, when in fact my story relates to this, I did get kind of in an argument about it. And I said, look, I've been here for a long period of time. And when I came day one, I said, these are the non-negotiable requirements that I have to be successful. What are they? Not anything you would have thought. I wasn't asking for team. I wasn't asking for money. I was asking for the data science team to do two things. That is, one, connect my learning platform to our data warehouse and ingest that data and pivot it in a way that connects three data sources. One is my learning data, right? My LMS. Two is my CRM data, my people data. And three, and that might actually include people data internally too. So there might be two systems, like a whatever infrastructure system that knows who, Todd and Casey and Dave are, or external, which is our client base, right? And three, product telemetry. I love that word. Usage data. What did somebody go and do over time? And they looked at me and said, I don't have time for this. Ask again, I don't have time for this. This is not important. Hard stop. Why? I still want an answer. Why was that not important? And why did I fail to persuade any leadership in my organization to understand? I had to go outside and do C-Lab. I had to go all these other things to come back around and go, oh yeah, now I get it. And like, yeah, because I had to go get all these other people to talk and tell you about it. And now and as I was walking out of the door of that role, they finally came to me and said this. And this was a conversation I had with our data scientist who left right after for similar reasons. He said to me, he called me, it was 5:00. I was getting ready to walk out. I'd actually been in the office at that point. He called me and said, oh my God, Dave, I get it. You don't know how much of an impact the efforts that your team has put in to decrease churn and increase retention and increase adoption. I can't believe it. And that, my friends, is why this is so hard. It's political capital. It's sheer spite and motivation to get things through and done. But what the nuances are, you got to learn how to speak business, as my friends from my old boss from Tennessee would have said. The conversations that I started to have were better, where leadership goes, oh, you mean you're connecting the dots? So if you see Jim and Judy and Jane go and they do a thing in the LMS, and then that comes back out and I see when they did it, you could do things like, oh, look, I'm going to do a diagram over time where let's do a live training. I'm going on site and I can see all the people that registered. But day 2, there's a spike. And day 3, it eases off a little bit. And then we come back in and go, well, you're not quite getting it. Let's do another refresh training. And let's do something. And you see it steady state out to the max seat count of that app. You did that in education, and that's powerful. But you don't see it, and it's invisible if you're just looking at vanity metrics. You're going to have hearsay and wishful thinking.
So, Dave, the joke is here. I'm the Todd bot. I love to absorb the things you say, and then I try to spin them back out in a way that I think is a good summary. That was something about how my brain will process it. And one of the things that you said there that I think is really fascinating is if I were to ask any executive out there, if I were to go to a CEO, a CTO, a CIO, a CPO, a CRO, it doesn't really matter, right? Any executive, if I were to go to them and say, is education of your customers important? I think all of them would say yes, right? I don't think there's any of them that would say we shouldn't educate our customers. So what's fascinating though is that when it actually comes down to trying to show if the education drove the business outcome that we want, they'll often say that doesn't really matter. They're okay with the kind of the assumption that that's impactful, but not necessarily willing to do the work to show the impact that it's actually having. And I think that's sometimes the disconnect that I see is data is valuable for more than just showing that you made an impact. It's also valuable for figuring out how to have a better impact, because the endpoint shouldn't just be, look how good we did. It should be, look how much better we could do if we made such and such change, or how did this impact the change in the future? Going back to your point about agility and actually thinking like an agile product shop. So from my perspective, I think that's the part where it oftentimes breaks down, is like executives would say education matters and that it's important, but how do you help them to understand that you need to see these other metrics? Because no matter how good you do at your first pass, your second pass, your third pass of creating a good customer education experience, it can always be better. And that's the end game that we're trying to get towards. And I think that maybe that's where the disconnect is, or at least that's where my brain went as you were talking. So I'd love your thoughts there if you think I'm off base or not.
No, I don't think you're off base. I really like, Todd, how you've articulated that. And I think it's 100% accurate. Every leader will assume there's benefit. Problem is, you're going to be able to measure it. And this is where I see a real failure in our business. And I mean this, I'm talking right now to you executives, if you're listening out there, and you senior leaders, if you're listening out here. I'm not mean about it. I'm just saying this is really important, that unless you start driving from, let me put it this way. Okay, I want to build an education program. This is really great. If any of you are listening out there and you're trying to do this right now, what are the things you're going to do? Okay, well, kind of traditionally in SaaS, we've seen, okay, I'm a VP of customer success or product, or maybe product or whatever. And I go, we need an education program. Somebody takes that on. And then they go pick an LMS. Then they go hire some people. And then this is like what South Park and the underwear gnomes, if you know what I'm talking about. Step 1, steal the underwear. Step 2, step 3, profit. Okay, it's literally like that. They're missing the whole middle of this process, which is what I say, and I'm not really here to push for my services or my approach. Anybody can do this. I happen to productize it a little bit. What are you doing? What are you chasing? What's the problem? A good story I can tell you is when I started at Gainsight, they bless them for doing this. They defined a very specific problem set when I entered, and I took a role as a manager of the Success for Administrators program. Didn't have education, didn't have anything in the title. My mission was to come and figure out why Gainsight administrators were stuck learning the product. And that made me think about just what you're saying here. You're developing education as a product. It is your product. There's no discrimination between it. If you start to decouple your product from what you say about your product, you're losing the canon. The canon is all of the. I like to think that we need a role like an explainer in chief, right? Who is this person? They float around the org. I want to call a CLO. A CLO is the most underpaid C-level position ever, and in my opinion, I looked on Glassdoor or whatever. Somebody's got to keep all the ducks in a row and the narrative in a row, and understand what does this thing we built do, and how's that changing over time, and how do we continue to grow that in a way that maps to our business. So I'm going to try to show you a screen here that turns executives' eyes. This is from a presentation I gave months ago. Let's see if I can zoom it in. All right. So this was real data at Gainsight. This is years ago, so there's no sensitive information. All the names are anonymized, so don't worry about that. We had a problem with onboarding, very discrete problem. And if you look at this over here, these aren't real accounts, so we didn't have Burlington Textiles or anything like that. Time to value, TTV, is a great metric to measure. What does that mean? Well, it's kind of arbitrary. It means the time to first value or the time to value. That's the time that, as we defined it, you may define it differently. It's when, okay, both of you brainstorm, signed up for Gainsight, and day one, we got implemented, we got everything ready to go. Now it's time for training. Now you, as a user cohort, are taking the time to learn. We've got delays. Oh, I can't do training today. We're doing it all live. We started out at 135 days, 4 months more of onboarding time. We, after building an on-demand program, reduced that to 36 days, 1 month. Okay. So, and there are other metrics. So that is impact. When Nick's the CEO saw this, education did this. Yeah, that was our goal. That's what we accomplished. But we didn't accomplish it alone. I like to think about education as a tapestry that overlays the entire organization as a network. Everybody's educating. You just need a central bolus or a focus of people that help you architect a strategy and implement it and execute it. And execution is often where you fail. There's other things. Let's say this was from a presentation we gave a long time ago. Adam Evermeski used to work at Optimizely. And the problem set there was our customer support is off the hook. And at the point they want to decrease by 50%. Look what happened. When they launched the universe or the Optiverse, over time, this is a precipitous downfall of customer support tickets. Actually, it started to come up. You know what that is? That's good questions and new, novel learning questions. I think I have some other stuff in here. Let me try one more and then we can get back on the road. This was a university that I launched, and this is more like the on-demand part, but now you're seeing adoption coming from I release new content, adoption, relaunching a university, way more adoption. I launched certification, way more adoption. I started badges, little tight things, way more adoption. We increased the usage of this by like 200 and something percent. So what I'm trying to get to is that when you have data and you're actually bringing that data to light and doing QBRs or EBRs with your executive leadership team, and you're showing on a monthly basis with what I call like a walking around deck or a pitch deck for education. We're going after this target, we hit this goal. We went after this target, we hit that goal. And instead of my peers and folks like me losing our positions when a riff comes, and you say, well, that same CEO said, well, we see the value in education, but now the first ones that can't prove anything, so they're gone. Same goes for education or enablement. Same goes for L&D. Those positions are irrelevant now because you didn't realize that you were saving. And I'll do one more stat here. Let's imagine you had a team of CSMs who now have to go back to do the training. You can do the calculus on that as well and say, okay, what is the impact? Like I let go of all of my education teams, and now CSMs are doing the job. Okay, cool. Let's do some math. maybe let's say I have 20, every CSM in my org has 20 training hours a week, and I have 400 customers to serve, and I have a $100 million ARR coming in the door, right? And I have a team of 20 CSMs to do that work. You could run a calculation and find this is millions of dollars you're leaving on the table because you decided that, oh no, well, somebody will do the training. It's not consistent. It's garbage. You're wasting time. These are the metrics that matter. This is the important stuff. Get out of your head, get out of the vanity, and start really going to talking with other peers and directing. You're pulling a lot of weight in customer education, way more than any of you ever know. I was surprised.
So Dave, we started the conversation by saying, hey, the metrics I track are easy. So that's why I'm tracking it. Mm-hmm. If I want to change the way that people perceive my role, customer education, I need to start by having a conversation around business outcomes, things that matter to the leadership team. You've given us some phenomenal examples of, time to value and onboarding, reducing down support tickets. In some case, we want good questions coming in. We can measure that. You've talked about product usage. The first goal is to align yourself with the business goals. Okay, yes. Let's say I have now done that. Am I now working with those individual teams to say, hey, I see that this is your goal, a person that's over onboarding, or hey, customer success, I see that it's to reduce down churn, and you feel that to reduce down churn, we need your customers to fully adopt these features. Are you now meeting with these different business groups? Is that step two? Where do I go from here? If people say, yes, let's align, now what's the next best practice you're sharing with us?
You architect your strategy, and you pull a lot of your peers and leaders in from your org to canonize it. So these are the things we're going to go. Look out 3 to 5 years. Doesn't have to be all done at once. You can move things around, but you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're part of somebody else's plan. And then from there, one of the jobs of an education person, I look at it as a center of excellence. And some of the best people I know that do our role are natural. I don't even know how to call it. They're emissaries. They're the people that are out there, and they show up at the product meeting, all of the different disciplines. They show up at the CSMs, all hands. They show up wherever and talk about stuff. They're always there. They interact with enablement people who often try to disconnect from this process. They do internal training as well. So if you're not constantly, this is why it's really hard, because if one person show, this is really hard to do. But as you start to stratify and get, like me as a manager or director, my job is always networking internally and sometimes externally to get everybody in alignment to say, well, here's a really good practical example. I see the emergence of digital customer success.
Right.
And this is going years back to when we were starting to see the beginnings of the new movement, which now people are leading with. Digital customer success is really affecting more scale through electronic means, AI and other kind of things. It's not perfect, but it's moving in the right direction. That's what customer education is. It's both that VILT and traditional education services and scale, but it's stick with scale. When we don't stick with scale, we lose, right? Mm. And when you're in that scale-based motion, what you should be doing is doing quick hits and things to try to offload everybody else's work. And I like using the word canon right now. You talk to a bunch of different people and they say different things about your product. So one of the most dangerous things that I've ever seen is you get a disconnect between a CS org who's now trying to go into scaled motion, and I often see them trying to rebuild the wheel. Mm. And whereas, here I am and I've been here and I can't connect. Because no, we got this. Or, well, let us lead. No, customer success is customer education. The differences are nuanced. We are part of that whole fabric, again, of interactivity, because we're building a kernel, a core of excellence in knowledge, and we're managing that and disseminating it in all kinds of different cadences, not just in an LMS, but that's a core of it. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, Dave. It's one of the thing I would add, and I know Todd wants to add a comment to this, is one other thing I think right now that customer education is in a perfect place to seize the opportunity, right? If you go after it, right? They always say that the opportunity of a lifetime needs to be seized in the lifetime of the opportunity. Right now, with a lot of SaaS vendors looking to sell their AI, right? Microsoft's leading out with this. They're doubling their revenue with Microsoft Copilot. You're already paying $30 for M365. Now you're paying another $30 for Copilot. Well, guess what customers are saying? My users aren't even using Microsoft 365 the way they should today. How are they going to take advantage of all these great Copilot features? This is the time to seize that AI. If you are a SaaS vendor and you're looking to productize your AI module that's coming out, education is key to it, and education with the current value that they're supposed to be receiving today. If you can show that you're making that impact and that your education is going to lead them to have better impact with their AI, that's another one I think people are leaving on the table in customer education space.
Amen.
Casey,
Yep.
I love that your comment was like, look, the future is bright. Go find a way to chart a path forward. I want to take it in another direction, which is, Dave, as you were talking, I could hear the groans and the frustrations from some of our audience, because I think it's all too common for there to be a disconnect between customer success and customer education. Customer education feels marginalized. They feel ignored. Customer success feels overburdened, and they're reproducing and duplicating a lot of the effort of customer education. And the two teams can't seem to get on the same page. And so from my perspective, I see that so often, and I'm curious, there's such a good opportunity right now, like more so than ever before, to Casey's point, in so many different ways, for customer education to make an impact, for client success to make an impact. But when everybody owns a goal, when everybody owns a metric, nobody owns a metric. And I actually think that is one of the big problems that's causing that disconnect and that divide. So how do we overcome it, right? Because everybody should be focused on some company outcome. But as soon as we all focus on the same goal, people get territorial, they get protective, they want to prove that they're the impact, not you, and it can cause us to point guns at each other. So this is a therapy session, right? So how do we overcome that? I'm just curious your thoughts there. I totally see it, but I also get that this focus on outcome is part of the reason why I think we can sometimes end up at odds in an organization. So how do we overcome that?
Mm-hmm. This is really probably a complex answer, but I'm going to lead with attacking the source of the pain, which I'm going to be bold and I'm going to say it's leadership, including executive leadership. And I don't mean this to be pejorative or really pointed like daggers against that. I think there's an active education that needs to happen here. Self-education on part of our C-suite and our upper leaders to acknowledge and understand that there are people in this world who have names and positions and roles in education that are fluid, right? There's a lot of them out there. They could be called learning experience designer or an ID or an instructional designer or whatever. I've seen all kinds of there's a learning strategist and something else. But when we talk about education, if we're not identifying that and calling it out, if we're not saying, hey, we've got an educational problem, and putting a wall up and saying we're going to hire an education leader and they're going to come in and fix the problem. That's what we got, right? It was like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I'm going to hire Judy and she's, a teacher and she's going to figure it all out. And then they're ill-equipped. What I would compel an executive and a senior leader to really understand is, one, get your ego out of the way. This sounds kind of crude, but I've worked with so many leaders that say, no, I know everything about education. Or I work for an education company or what. Yes, we've sit in a class for all 20 years of our life or something or more in some cases. I got a master's degree, so it was ridiculous. I feel like that time was wasted. I could learn a whole lot more, but it wasn't about that. It was about the friction with people and the getting in hands-on. And I was a lab guy, so I was in the lab blowing stuff up and getting acid on my shirt and inhaling really bad stuff. I guess that's the reason I got into computers. The go back to the principles of the customer education manifesto. This should be on our executives' desks too. Look, this is how we connect to people. It's a human first activity. Even with AI, it's not going to solve the problem. We need to be out there looking and spotting for these challenges. And when we look like churn, okay? Why do people churn? My favorite story is everywhere I've gone is, well, our customers are stupid. That's just extreme. But I've kind of said that before. I'm like, well, you just must be stupid. Why? It's a little ego and it's a lot of experience. I've worked with this product. I understand the product. Now I'm having a hard time emotionally or being empathic towards somebody who does not have that experience like I do. Think about a Gen Z person who's coming in for their first job. And with one of those stats that one of my friends in SaaS gave me was, people on average right now in the SaaS world have to maintain knowledge and understanding of about 9 different SaaS applications and juggle them fluidly and be experts on them. Oh my God. Really? Go anywhere and look at it. Look at the provisioning people in any organization and look at the stack of technology that you have in your house. I did this. I was an enterprise security manager for a big ISP, and we did these inventories. I'm like, how is anybody ever going to learn all this stuff? And in that, go think about what a Gen Z person how they would learn. Traditionally, if you were in some other field, well, not traditionally, but people who are younger are looking at YouTube. They're looking at fast things. They're looking at small bites, doses, things that they can do on the bus, on the train, hopefully not in the car, but while they're in motion doing other things. They're absorbing information all the time in a very fluid and in the moment, in your face kind of way. But our system is set up with, no, we have to build a certification program and do everything by this. And you know what? That's going to take you years. You're never going to get anywhere. So look, we got to go to market. Your education is your product. It is not discriminated from it. If you don't have anybody on that, you're screwed. If you don't take care of the people and feed them with emotional support too, like interconnect them, make them feel cared about, because educators don't feel connected. That's not always true, but I've been there over and over and over again. Once you start turning like, oh, okay, we got that problem solved, and now you're onto something, and then your program gets dismantled and destroyed next year because somebody says, oh, we're going to move from this platform to this platform, we're going to do it this way. Or we had one executive say, well, we're just going to use AI for education. How is that going to work? Okay. This is a great therapy session. That is the pain. That is the PTSD and trauma our folks have in the field.
Dave, you nailed it with I had a similar conversation with an account we were working with, and the executive had said that same thing. We're going to have AI. And I said, well, do you have the data of how many active users do you have in your platform? Like, how many dark users do you have? Oh, we have about 40% of our user base is dark. Okay, so how do those 40% that get dark actually get educated by AI when they're not even in your application? That's interesting. So I think you're talking about it. Know your data, know the business outcomes, be able to get people together. Customer education is the glue to make all of these things work. I mean, if people just focus down on customer education, you seriously solve so many different problems. But you nailed it at the beginning. You have to develop the skill set of helping connect the dots across the organization. Dave, this has been awesome, man. I feel your passion. I feel your empathy for customer education, but I also love that you're challenging people in customer education. Be better. You can be better, but you have to embrace the hard to be better. And I thought, Dave, I've had so many different wild moments.
Love it. Yeah, this has been great. Any other questions as we're starting to wrap up here? Things that fun,
well, Dave,
curious about?
We always ask one question at the end of every session that we do. And that is,
awesome.
Hey, this has been a therapy session, and every good therapy session has a homework assignment. So if you could give our listeners one homework assignment, what would it be?
Ooh, right now, I would like to welcome anybody who hasn't experienced or joined C-Lab, the podcast, download an episode. That's just at https customer.education. Really, you can't miss that. It's customer.education. And we have now, this afternoon, as we're recording this, I'm just about to release our 132nd episode after 6 years of broadcasting with people who we're interacting with, or voices and leaders and practitioners that know this craft. And it's not about me. It's not about Adam. It's about a network of people that are really starting to gravitate together, and they want to do more. So go check that out. I have a website I'm developing separately, and you'll hear about it if anybody follows me. Please follow me, because if anybody in this audience needs to reach out and chat, I'm always available. I will always pick up the phone because I'm passionate to learn from you. And I appreciate you having me on the show to talk about this and share at least my perspective on SaaS and how we fit.
I love it. Dave, you really are a sponge, and it sounds like you're willing to wring out your soapy water on everybody so they can get clean and ready. That was kind of a weird analogy, but
I dig
that's
it.
a great way to end. Dave, thank you so much, and have a great
hose him down. All right, gentlemen, thank you. Todd, Casey, this has been a blast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave, thanks, man.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.